Izzy, welcome to the Astroben podcast. How are you doing?
Great. How are you today? Thank you
I'm
for having me.
I'm really good. The pleasure is mine. I love meeting different people in the industry, and yeah, I'm super excited to speak to you. So thank you for coming on. Um, so let's get straight to it. So you have a new book called Space Marketing. It's all about competing in the new commercial space industry, and I've had lots of people on the industry talking about the commercial space industry, um, the space economy, um, and there's lots of startups that are starting businesses in the industry, and one imagines that marketing is just as important as in any other sector. So how did the idea for the book come about? And yeah, how's it going? Is this your first book?
It is my first book, and it all started when I began to go into business. When I first started my business, it was in the mid 90s, and I ended up in what's called an environmental technology incubator. So, this particular place gave birth to all kinds of small businesses that were environmentally developing new technologies to make the world a better place. Seems great. And I met a lot of brilliant geniuses that had some very, very good inventions that would impact our days. It was everything from uh, reusing our water in our house to landfills and how to mitigate land waste in a very healthy way for the planet to watershed. It was just an amazing group of people. Well, these inventors didn't think marketing was important because after all, if you come up with this earth-shattering, world-changing technology, the world will flock to you and you don't need to market because you have something great. So there was a mentality there that they struggled with marketing. And coming into the space sector a couple of years ago, I went to the Atlantis exhibit at the Kennedy Space Center. Now, I had been there when I was 13 years old, and coming back as an adult, it was an epic moment. I will be honest with you. That particular display or presentation of the Atlantis, it will change your life, and it changed mine. I'm standing there at the end of the presentation going, I could mix marketing and my love for space. It was like a aha moment. So from that point on, I got back to where I live and I haven't looked back. And started to study space. 2015, the whole industry kind of shifted a little bit with the 2015 Space Act, which pretty much gave the open doors to commercial endeavors. And it has only been a very short time where we went from NASA, United States, and Russia being the only space particular countries with programs to over 70 countries have space. The UK is exploding with space. I mean, they're getting ready to build 7 spaceports. So it has really radically changed. However, I am seeing some of the same mentalities that I saw in the environmental incubator when I was started my business so many years ago. These particular business owners, especially the ones that are a little bit more established, they've only had one customer to woo, and that's NASA. Maybe an
Mm.
investor, maybe a few here and there, but they've not had to market. They've not had to market to get customers. They've not had to market to get grants. They've not had to market like the rest of the world has had to market. And so you've got your Procter and Gamble's, you've got your soaps, your spaghetti sauces. They've been entrenched in this marketing game for a long time. But these space companies have not. It's kind of a new territory. So I wrote this book as kind of like an introduction to marketing. Here's how it works.
Mm.
Here's what it is. And here's some success cases and some strategies and tactics. Throughout the book, I created a fictitious company so that we could apply all of the different strategies in marketing to that company so that the reader, the business, can see actually how it works, how to apply that strategy and technology. Because it's not enough to say, you need to do this. You need to show people, well, this is how you do it. And at the end of the book, after we've gone through how to, we start off with determining your audience, because your message will drastically be different if you're talking to legislators trying to get a law passed, or you are talking to a customer trying to sell landing equipment. It's going to be very different. So you have to understand who you're talking to. So we talk about determining who your audience is, and then the fundamentals of how to tell a story, the fundamentals of images and logos, and then we move on to strategies and tactics that you can use. And most of my strategies and tactics, they are not paid advertising. Paid advertising has a place, but it's not in this book. I think that a lot of paid advertising, they are struggling, that industry as a whole, because it's just not how, there is a time and place for it, but that's on down the road. There's a lot of things that you can do natively that not only don't cost you money, but may actually make you some money. And I'm all about, if it doesn't make you money, don't spend yours. And then as we go through the book and we finish up, and I go through different technologies that are coming that you need to be aware of, good marketing has a solid foundation. It has been the same for decades. But the tools, they change drastically. So there's always been having a great relationship with your audience. If you have a great relationship with your audience, it doesn't matter what tools you use to do that. That is the goal. Now, back during the 1950s to now, the tools have drastically changed. We have the internet, the iPhone put us on our head. COVID changed everything. I mean, we're talking right now as if we're right next door, and that was not something that was common before COVID. So
Yeah.
COVID has changed a lot in how we work and how we see the world. It's a lot bigger, I think. And I finish up the book with telling you how to hire talent. Explaining the different things that you look for in talent. Because when you're looking for an engineer, you may have certain things that you look for, but you don't want that necessarily in your videographer or your graphic designer. Now, there are some similarities, but there's certain things that you look for. And I compare using a company versus having in-house. Overall, I'm a fan of in-house because I think there's a lot of opportunities that you have for stories that are day-to-day, and that a company outside of that day-to-day is not going to see them. They're only going to see what you give them. And most entrepreneurs are so busy that they don't even have time to look up from what they're doing, much less capture the story and give it to another party. So I'm a fan of having somebody on staff. And so, and then that's pretty much how the structure of the book runs.
That sounds super cool and super relevant. In terms of marketing the book yourself, who are the people that are buying it or downloading it? Are they people who are starting up their own company, or are they people who are working for smaller companies? Who do you think is the person that's reading your book?
Well, when I first started my business, most of my career I've dealt with small businesses, maybe smaller organizations, up to about 250 people. So that's kind of the audience that I know, the startups in the people that have been in business for a little bit that are looking to take a step up. And that's who I'm talking to, is those business people, those CEOs, those entrepreneurs. And I hope that's who's buying it.
Yeah, and I
And
guess
if you're not
part
in
of your
space,
market.
it works. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
If you're not
completely.
in space,
I
it's
guess Yeah. Sorry, we've got a slight delay, but I get entirely what you're saying. Like, marketing is marketing. It doesn't matter if you're selling a product or a service. You're essentially just getting eyeballs or attention onto what you're selling. Um, but I guess the space industry, like you've used the example of the fictitious even rocket launch company. That's kind of quite an easier way for a lot of people to understand what a space company is. But how would a company say that is, I don't know, using data from satellites for a ground-based application? So they might be a small company, two or three of them. Do you think they should invest early on in a marketing person in-house, or do you think they should all read up and have an understanding of what the marketing goals are? Because ultimately, if you can't market what you're doing and you've got no customers, you don't have a business.
Right. And one of my sayings is that how can you change the world, build a company, or establish an industry if no one knows you exist? Marketing
Mm,
makes you exist. So this particular book, it's shown through the eyes of space, but it really has the strategies and the basics of any business, whether or not you're selling spaghetti sauce or space. So it's just good marketing fundamentals. Part of the problem with marketing is it's kind of all encompassing and it's kind of vague at the same time. When you say marketing,
mm,
some people will think sales. When you say marketing, other people will think of bad commercials because that's what we remember. But marketing is so much more than that. The NASA markets like they are the kings and queens of marketing. Space would not be here. Our space industry would not be here if it weren't for their efforts. They have marketed the whole time. And during the Apollo program, marketing was a major strategy. Now, when we talk about NASA, we usually talk and use different terms like outreach or education, but those are all still facets of marketing. It is bringing the
mm,
awareness of it. And that is the key. There are tons of things that we're marketed to every day that we want to see. Is polio was almost eradicated due to marketing. The electric light bulb was marketed to the people. We already had gas lamps. We didn't need light, but yet the marketing made us adopt that. So there's a lot of ideas like going to the moon or going to Mars or going past that that need to be marketed as well. And we just call it something different. But it's all a facet of marketing.
completely. There's so many different types of marketing, but perhaps a couple we can look at. Social media, I would probably put in the bucket of marketing. Um, and I think that's something that companies in the space industry either do really well or really badly. And I guess is that because the challenge is they don't really know who they're targeting their social media to. Because if they're just trying to build their profile in the space industry, that's still a tiny niche demographic compared to the rest of the world. Um, so how important is social media in a company's marketing strategy, do you think?
Well, we first look at how important it is to the audience that you're targeting. If it is not important to the target, then you're going to look at what is. Social media is a very powerful thing, but if that's not where your customer is, that's not where your audience is, then it's not going to help you to develop that. You need to at least have a presence. As far as how important it is to businesses, I believe that a lot of the inventors and CEOs and things that I have seen and some of the horrible marketing that I have seen as a result has more to do with the fact that they are so busy developing their widget or their landing gear or their engines that there is no
Mm,
bandwidth to actually do it. It's a box that's checked. Oh, we got our website up. Let's check that box and move on. But yet,
mm,
they don't realize that that website is actually doing them damage. So if I'm an investor or I'm a potential employee, that's a market as well. I'm going to go to your website first and I'm going to check you out. And if your website looks like it hasn't been visited in a while, it's got old articles that aren't relevant anymore, it hasn't been updated in 2 years, then all of a sudden you went from this big giant company in my mind to this few people startup that maybe is not a good bet as far as
Mm.
investing my money. And it can happen that quick. And so you've got to be careful with that public facing stuff, to make sure that it looks like who you want to be, not just checking a box because it was necessary to get a grant in. And be a little bit more
Mm.
on purpose with it. And one particular company that I'm thinking about, when I went to their website or their YouTube, which is a very powerful platform, they had a lot of views on their videos and they had a pretty decent following, and they were not monetizing their YouTube. Now, all that is clicking a button, and guess what? You
Mm.
get paid. It's beautiful. So not only are you marketing, but you're getting paid to market. Now there's some requirements to actually be able to monetize, but a lot of that just has to do with how big your audience is and how many views you get. But why not? It's sitting there. It's money just sitting on the table. And I don't know of too many of these small businesses that can just leave money on the table. So if you have a good marketing person, a good person that can focus on that, they can make you money, as well as they may be able to cover their own wages even, as well as market you in an effective way and bring in grants. And when NASA was at the height of their marketing with the Apollo program, they weren't charging the American people to be able to, they were selling them an idea. But how they got paid was 4% of the national budget. It was the largest chunk of the
Mm.
national budget that the space industry has ever seen. That's a pretty good return.
Yeah, completely. I mean, what do you think about there's a lot of people that study marketing at college or university and, go into marketing. And I'm thinking of people that I know that are marketers, in different industries, and they sort of fall into a niche of marketing. They might be working for pharmaceutical companies or financial institutions. But space marketing, I don't know anyone who does space marketing. Is that just because, as you say, there hasn't been to date the emphasis put on it? Or is it a sort of emerging niche in the marketing world?
I believe it's an emerging niche. Like I was saying earlier, before you only had one customer to market to or present to or woo, and that was NASA
Mm.
or investors. So there wasn't much call for it. There really wasn't. That's how you did business. But now, take moonlanders for example. In the United States alone, we had 3 competitors for moonlanders. That's just what we saw. That's not counting all the little guys that had moonlanders in development stages that were trying to. How many moonlanders do you think there are now across the world? We have so many
Mm.
countries getting ready to now go to the moon. So you went from a very few people that did moonlanders to all of a sudden there's probably, 40, 50 that do moonlanders, if you count all the different countries that are trying to do it. So it has exploded. Now, if you sell a part for a moonlander, and how many people will actually start supplying that moonlander with parts? So all of a sudden now you went from being the only person or one of just a few to one of many. And now you have to
Mm.
market. Plus, there's a lot of things that are turning from being business to business in space to business to consumer, like data, earth monitoring, that sort of thing. That has turned from business to consumer, and it's a completely different dynamic. So that's
Sure. How
and there's all recent changes.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned data or data. How much of a role do you think big data can serve in marketing within the space industry? For instance, if you had the data on how many kids watch Star Wars on Disney Plus, you know, would you would you be able to leverage that data? How do you think space marketing is going to use data in the future?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of data companies that we're going to see come more online. I mean, already satellites are producing a lot. I think with the whole global warming awareness that is starting to happen, we have a lot of satellites that are getting ready to be launched that are going to monitor different things as far as global warming. And there's going to be
Mm,
a lot more how to use the data. So you're going to have people that can take the data and make it usable for your businesses down here on planet, or your businesses that are everyday, or your research, and they have to take that data and distill it. So that is a service. We're going to see a lot more of those, and which I'm excited to see. You know, the data that we've been able to get from space were the first things that we saw, the hole in the ozone layer. Well, there's two holes in the ozone layer, and they're healing now because we saw them from space, and we were able to change legislation down here to make sure that the aerosols that were causing them were discontinued, and now they are healing. So there is
mm.
positive there, and and that's just with Earth observation. That's not counting all of the other data that we're not able to. I mean, there's so much coming from space that we can barely stream it down here and distill it into something usable. So I think we're going to see a lot in that area. That's B2C, or business to consumer. Business to consumer.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what metrics and KPIs are most useful in the space industry. So KPIs being key performance indicators. So I work in the hospitality industry, and for me, the metrics are normally numbers of followers on social media, um, the reach of events, how many press articles we're getting, that kind of thing. Now, a lot of that I can't imagine is, well, it might not necessarily be that important to a space industry startup. So, are there, obviously, it varies massively depending on what you're marketing in the space industry, but would you say there's certain metrics that are specifically relevant to the space industry that might not be to something like the hospitality industry?
I'm not sure of that. I think it depends on your goals, what your metrics should be. So at the end
Mm,
of the day, it all boils down to, did it make a profit? And have you seen movement within your company, and what are your goals? If your goals are to get more employees, well, did you have more applications come in? Were they more qualified
mm,
applications? So those are metrics all on their own. Now, when you're talking about social media metrics, say I am doing an awareness campaign, well, then those social media metrics are going to be very important. How is my reach? How is my engagement? I think engagement is more important than reach, because reach just means that somebody had the opportunity to see it. That doesn't mean that they actually saw it. It just meant that it went on that to
yeah.
that feed, and they could have not checked their feed or not gone down that far. But actual engagement, what did they do when they saw it? Did they like it? Did they comment on it? That's more relevant than how far did it go. Now, the reach is important because that shows you that your algorithm part with whatever social platform you're doing is correct, that it is liking your post, but that doesn't mean that the end person saw it. So it depends on your goal. If you're trying to tweak to see what your algorithms are like, because they keep changing it. And I found out some things here recently about algorithms that I find annoying, to say the least. If you have a website link in your message, or you have a call to action, it will downgrade that post, considering it to be business that's not generating income for them. So it's free advertising basically. So they're kind of tending to hurt that. And I did a test, and lo and behold, the one that I had the link on did not do as well as the one that didn't have the link. So how do you do a post without a call to action and a link to a website? It's an interesting dilemma, to be honest with you. So I'm figuring that one out. I'm trying to put it maybe in the comments, the links, and trying different things to see what will work. So your reach is very important to determine that type of thing. But your engagement, if you're wanting to see what people do, that's the part. And are you seeing them take action as a result of those posts? And where are they? Like the space industry, from my perspective, all of the people that I do stuff with is on LinkedIn. I found you on LinkedIn, and you requested me to follow your podcast. I'm like, yay, another podcast. That's great. You know, we need more space podcasts as far as I'm concerned. And I was able to connect with you on LinkedIn. I love it. And that's where a lot of the people that I see in space, that's where they go to, because there's not all the, you know, what do you have for dinner or arguments or political stuff. It's all business. And I love that. So, but if you're doing maybe somebody that's a little younger, you know, maybe late teens, mid-teens, you're going to go TikTok. You know, if you're going for 20s and you're doing like a beauty product, then you may go Instagram. So there's different, it depends on what your goals are, what you're going to do, and how you're going to tweak it to maybe be monetizing versus not. And I always recommend looking at that direction, because we all need more budget. We all need income. So why not make our marketing pay for itself instead of cost?
Exactly. Well, I agree with you. I think everyone should spend more time and attention and money on marketing. And I think your book is a great way to find out how to do that, especially if you're a sort of aspiring astropreneur that may not be able to hire a consultant from day one, just to think about how they're pitching, who their target audience is, and what their brand identity is. I think that's really important. I mean, because it's all very well if you're NASA, because you've got this iconic logo and brands that will probably never change. But if you're entering the space industry, it's really hard to know what you are when you're trying to raise funds, you're trying to build customers, and the marketing side is, as you say, it's very separate to sales, and I completely agree with you on that. Who do you think is an example of a company that is clever or innovative in terms of how they do their marketing? Because I can think of a couple of obvious examples of companies that market well, but are there any that sort of spring to mind that market cleverly in the space industry?
Well, I have a couple of favorites. One is Elon Musk. He has been brilliant with a few of his marketing strategies. Like, for example, when he sent up the test Falcon rocket and had the Tesla come out of the nose, all he had to do was put a concrete block there. So, but instead of just releasing a concrete block, and that one launch being the story, he launched another story. And if you look at the Tesla car, it's in orbit right now. It goes past Mars, which is meaningful. It also has little Easter eggs in it. So there's a plaque that says "Made by Humans." It has a David Bowie song. I think it's David Bowie playing on the radio. You know, there's a Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, I mean, it's just, he's got so many little Easter eggs on it, and in itself, it is a story that keeps going. You can look to see where Starman is right now, and it became more than just a rocket launch, and left a story. So I thought he did that amazingly well. As far as like companies that do great partnering, would be Virgin Galactic. You know, they've worked with Under Armour to develop their spacesuits. They've dealt with Land Rover, and I think they've done a fabulous job of partnering with other companies And he has basically, Virgin Galactic is a company that has been out of nothing, really. I mean, it's something out of nothing, which I thoroughly respect, is that it's scrappy, but yet it has a good final product that will hopefully launch at the end of this year, another test.
Absolutely.
So
I
those are
love those two
my two.
examples
Those
as
are
well.
two of, yeah.
Yeah,
And there's a
because
few
Elon
others, I mean,
sort
that
of
have done really well.
yeah, because Elon famously doesn't
Go ahead.
spend money on PR as well as for Tesla as well. Um, and I think it's a great example you've given of the uh, of the uh, of the Tesla car going around Mars, because it just carries on the marketing story. It's going to go on for years. You know, every now and again there'll be a news cycle of, oh, Elon Musk's Tesla is going past Jupiter, whatever it is, and it's just extending that customer engagement, which is really cool. And Virgin, you know, I've always been a Branson fan on the business side, and I think they're so good at brand. I mean, they do brands better than anyone. They've managed to smash that with Virgin Galactic as well. So look, it's been really great to chat. I think I read somewhere that you may write another book in the future. Can you say what that will be
I'm
on? Would
actually
that be
working on,
space marketing part two?
well, I'm working on two particular projects right now. One is our connection to space, because a lot of people don't realize just how integrated space technologies are in their life. And when we have the question, why are we spending money on space exploration when there's things to fix down here? Well, when we go explore, it fixes things down here. You can't create a little ecosystem up in space and not have that technology come down here and fix the ecosystem down here. One of my favorite sayings is, there's no dinosaurs on the moon. So there's not like we can use gas-powered transportation past Earth. So we have to come up with different ways to get beyond the moon. That is going to trickle down here. It's going to change our fuel down here into cleaner ways. Already solar has done that. So that's one of my projects. And then the other project that I'm doing is space marketing spaceports. And I thoroughly believe that the best way to learn is to do. And I am working on getting a spaceport in Kentucky and using all that to help develop tools for other countries and states to establish their own spaceports. Because it's all about getting the messaging out there to different entities, like messaging to your public, messaging to your legislators, investors. So there's all kinds of different marketing that's a result of that. So that's the two books that I'm working on at the moment.
That is super cool. I'm really glad you finished with that, because I think that that's probably going to be one of the most important things in terms of space exploration. Like, it's all very well going back to the moon and onto Mars, but unless we're communicating the benefits down here on Earth, it's not going to be sustainable. So I think it's massively important.
Right.
And thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. Thank you so much, Izzy.
Thank you.